Have you ever wondered why some women seem to carry a quiet strength that draws people in, no matter their age or circumstances? It's not about external beauty or loud confidence, it's an inner peace that radiates from a deep sense of self. In Carl Jung's psychology, this peace emerges from rare traits shaped by individuation, the process of becoming your whole self by facing the shadow, the hidden parts of your psyche like fears or unresolved pain. These women embody traits that set them apart, often cultivated through abstinence from seeking approval or rushing into relationships. Stoic philosophy, with thinkers like Marcus Aurelius, supports this by teaching that true calm comes from within, not from external validation. Modern self-worth psychology adds that this peace heals trauma bonds, those sticky attachments that keep us tied to others' opinions. From a third-person perspective, women who are at peace with themselves often display a rare trait, unshakable self-acceptance. Jung described the shadow as the repository of what we reject, flaws, aging, or past mistakes. When integrated, it leads to wholeness rather than fragmentation. These women don't chase perfection, they embrace their imperfections as part of their story. This isn't weakness, it's strength forged through facing discomfort. Stoic Seneca wrote about accepting what is, not what we wish to be, and modern trauma research shows how self-acceptance rewires the brain, reducing stress and boosting resilience. Their presence feels steady because they've stopped measuring their worth against others' gazes. Turning to you directly, have you ever felt trapped by seeking validation, maybe from a partner, family, or even social media? That pull can be exhausting, leaving you second-guessing your value. The first rare trait of a woman at peace is her ability to sit with solitude without fear. Jung believed solitude connects us to the unconscious, where true insights arise. For you, this might mean carving out time alone, not to escape, but to listen. Feel that initial unease? That's your shadow inviting you to explore why silence feels threatening. Abstinence from constant connection, whether through scrolling or socializing, creates space for this. Stoic Epictetus urged focusing on what's within our control, our thoughts, and solitude helps you reclaim that power. Women who master this exude a calm that others notice, not because they're aloof, but because they're whole. This trait ties to another, the ability to observe emotions without reacting. In Jungian terms, emotional triggers often stem from an imbalanced anima, the inner feminine that seeks harmony but can overcompensate when wounded. These women pause when anger or sadness hits, letting the feeling pass like a cloud, as Marcus Aurelius advised. Psychologically, this breaks trauma cycles where old hurts drive impulsive responses. Have you caught yourself snapping at someone only to regret it later? That's a signal to pause. Abstinence from instant reactions, whether lashing out or suppressing, lets you see the emotion's root. This steadiness makes them magnetic. People sense they won't be pulled into drama. Building on this, a third trait is their clear boundaries. Jung's individuation process involves defining the self against the collective unconscious, the societal push to please others. These women say no without guilt, protecting their energy. Stoic philosophy supports this, with Seneca viewing time as a precious resource. For you, this might mean declining a request that drains you or stepping back from a conversation that feels off. Notice the resistance. That's often the shadow of people-pleasing, learn from past expectations. Abstinence from overgiving shifts the dynamic, others respect their limits, and that respect mirrors their own. In archetypal analysis, these women embody the wise woman archetype, not the martyr. The collective unconscious often casts women as caregivers, but those at peace redefine that role. Modern self-worth studies show how boundaries heal codependency, where you might have tied your value to fixing others. Have you felt that pull to smooth things over, even when it costs you? That's a trauma bond at work, linking your peace to someone else's mood. Abstinence from that role lets you reclaim your center. The fourth trait is their embrace of vulnerability as strength. Jung saw vulnerability as a gateway to the shadow, revealing what we hide. These women share their struggles not for pity but for connection, integrating their humanity. Stoic Aurelius wrote of enduring hardship with dignity, and psychology links vulnerability to resilience. For you, this might mean admitting a fear, like aging or failure, without shame. Have you avoided that honesty, fearing judgment? Abstinence from perfectionism opens that door. Their openness draws people in, not because it's weak, but because it's real. This leads to a fifth trait, letting go of control. Jung's anima/animus balance shows how an overdeveloped need to control stems from an unintegrated masculine side. These women release outcomes, trusting life's flow. Epictetus taught that we control our efforts, not results. Psychologically, this reduces anxiety tied to trauma-driven hypervigilance. Have you clung to plans, fearing chaos? Abstinence from micromanaging frees you. Their ease with uncertainty feels powerful, attracting those who value authenticity. These traits, self-acceptance, solitude, emotional observation, boundaries, vulnerability, and letting go, form a foundation of peace. They challenge projections, where others' insecurities land on you. Through abstinence, you dissolve those, becoming a woman at peace with herself. As these traits take root, they pave the way for a deeper sense of peace that shapes how you move through relationships and challenges. The sixth rare trait of a woman at peace with herself is her capacity to extend compassion without losing herself. In Jungian terms, this flows from a balanced anima, the inner feminine that nurtures without overgiving. These women offer kindness from a place of fullness, not obligation, having integrated their shadow through abstinence from people-pleasing. Stoic Marcus Aurelius emphasized acting with virtue, not for reward, and modern self-worth psychology shows how this builds secure attachments, breaking trauma bonds where love felt conditional. From a third-person view, women with this trait radiate a warmth that feels genuine because it's not tied to approval. Jung's concept of the collective unconscious reveals archetypes like the nurturing mother, but when unbalanced, it becomes martyrdom. These women avoid that trap, offering support without erasing their boundaries. Psychologically, this stems from healed wounds where they once absorbed others' emotions to feel valued. Their compassion draws people in, not as a savior, but as a steady presence. Have you noticed how some relationships leave you depleted because you gave more than you had? That's the shadow of overcare, and abstinence from that cycle restores your energy. Turning to you directly, have you ever felt guilty for setting a limit, like saying no to a friend's demand? That guilt often comes from a cultural script that praises self-sacrifice. Jung would call this a complex, a triggered emotional pattern that pulls you back into old roles. The woman at peace observes this guilt without acting on it, letting it pass as Epictetus advised, focusing only on what's within your control. For you, this might mean noticing the urge to fix someone's mood and choosing to stay centered instead. Abstinence from overextending shifts your focus inward, where compassion begins. Their ability to give without losing themselves feels empowering, a trait others admire. This connects to the seventh trait, living with intentional presence. Jung's individuation process highlights the self, the unified core that emerges when you align with your true nature. These women live deliberately, not reacting to every external demand. Stoic Seneca wrote about retreating from chaos to examine life, and modern trauma research links presence to reduced anxiety, countering the hypervigilance of past hurts. In archetypal terms, they embody the wise woman, guiding through clarity rather than force. Their presence feels magnetic because it's unhurried, a contrast to the rush that often defines modern life. For you, this might mean pausing before responding to a stressful email or taking a moment to breathe amid family chaos. Have you felt scattered, jumping from one task to another to keep up? That's the shadow of avoidance, dodging inner stillness. Abstinence from constant busyness lets you reconnect with yourself. Psychologically, this builds a secure base, where you're not swayed by others' moods. Women with this trait attract genuine connections because their steadiness invites trust, not dependency. These traits build on each other, creating a cycle of growth that addresses deeper challenges. One such challenge is the pull of projections, when others project their insecurities onto you. Jung saw projections as the mind's way of displacing what it can't face. A woman at peace recognizes this, not taking it personally. Stoic philosophy supports this with Aurelius's advice to see others' actions as reflections of their own struggles. For you, this might mean noticing when a friend's criticism feels off, perhaps it's their shadow, not your flaw. Abstinence from defending yourself against every slight lets you observe, fostering clarity. This clarity also tackles trauma bonds, those intense attachments formed in dysfunctional dynamics. Modern psychology describes how intermittent approval, warmth followed by withdrawal, keeps you hooked. Have you felt drawn to someone's occasional kindness, ignoring the pattern? That's the bond at work. Women at peace break this by abstaining from chasing those highs, focusing instead on their own stability. Their peace becomes a shield, attracting healthier interactions. Another layer is the fear of solitude, often a shadow fear tied to the collective unconscious's abandonment archetype. Jung believed solitude connects us to wisdom, but society trains us to fear it. Stoic Epictetus urged finding contentment within, and these women do. For you, this might mean facing a quiet evening without filling it with noise. Notice the discomfort. That's your chance to grow. Abstinence from distraction reveals your resilience, making solitude a strength others sense. As these traits deepen, they dissolve the need to prove your worth. Projections, trauma bonds, and solitude fears lose power when you stop feeding them. The woman at peace with herself stands firm, her rare traits a testament to inner work. This peace draws people not through effort, but through authenticity. As these rare traits solidify, they begin to reshape how you navigate the complexities of life, particularly in the face of judgment or misunderstanding from others. The woman at peace with herself carries an eighth trait, the ability to remain steady under scrutiny. In Jungian terms, this stems from integrating the shadow, the parts of us we hide, like self-doubt or past failures, that others might use to criticize. These women don't crumble when faced with disapproval, they've faced their own judgments internally, aligning with Jung's individuation process. Stoic Marcus Aurelius taught that others' opinions reflect their own minds, not your truth, and modern self-worth psychology shows how this resilience reduces the impact of external noise on your psyche. From a third-person perspective, women with this trait exude a quiet authority because they've stopped seeking external validation. The collective unconscious often pushes the archetype of the pleasing woman, someone who adjusts to fit others' expectations. But these women break that mold, their steadiness a signal of inner strength. Psychologically, this trait counters trauma responses where criticism once triggered shame or defensiveness. Their calm under pressure draws respect, not pity, as people sense a boundary they can't easily cross. Have you ever felt your stomach tighten when someone questioned your choices, pushing you to explain yourself? That's the shadow of approval seeking, and abstinence from over-justifying builds this resilience. Turning to you directly, have you noticed how quickly you jump to defend yourself when challenged, even over small things? That reflex often comes from a wound where your worth felt tied to others' views. The woman at peace observes this urge without acting on it, letting the moment pass as Epictetus suggested, focusing on your own judgment, not theirs. For you, this might mean pausing when a colleague's remark stings, noticing the impulse to argue, and choosing silence instead. Abstinence from the need to be understood by everyone creates space for self-trust. Their unshaken demeanor becomes a quiet power, attracting those who value authenticity over conformity. This steadiness connects to a ninth trait, the courage to release past regrets. Jung saw the shadow as a storehouse of guilt or shame from old decisions, and integrating it frees the psyche. These women don't dwell on what they can't change, they see regrets as lessons, not life sentences. Stoic Seneca advised reflecting on the past to learn, not to suffer, and modern trauma research links letting go to reduced anxiety, breaking cycles of rumination. In archetypal terms, they move beyond the wounded healer, who carries others' pain, into the wise woman, who transforms her own. Have you replayed a mistake, wishing you could rewrite it? That's the shadow calling for release. Abstinence from self-blame, stepping back from the mental loop, opens that door. For you, this might mean sitting with a memory of a failed relationship or missed opportunity, not to fix it, but to understand it. Notice the tension. That's your chance to let it soften. Psychologically, this heals trauma bonds where regret kept you tethered to what was. Their ability to move forward feels liberating, drawing others who seek that same freedom. The woman at peace doesn't erase her past, she reclaims it as part of her growth. The 10th trait builds on this, embracing change with grace. Jung's concept of the anima/animus balance shows how resistance to change often stems from an unintegrated masculine side, clinging to control. These women flow with life's shifts, aging, loss, new roles, seeing them as part of individuation. Stoic Aurelius viewed change as natural, urging acceptance over resistance, and psychology ties this flexibility to emotional health. Have you fought against a life transition, fearing it erases who you are? That's the shadow of identity tied to the old. Abstinence from forcing stability, letting go of the need to hold everything still, fosters adaptability. Their ease with change feels inspiring, attracting those who admire resilience. These traits deepen your engagement with projections, where others' insecurities land on you. Jung described projections as unconscious displacements, and a woman at peace sees them for what they are, others' struggles, not her burden. Stoic philosophy reinforces this with Epictetus's focus on controlling your responses. For you, this might mean noticing when a friend's envy feels personal, then reflecting on its source. Abstinence from taking it on shifts the dynamic, reducing conflict. Their clarity becomes a shield, drawing healthier connections. Trauma bonds also surface here, where intermittent approval keeps you hooked. Modern psychology notes how a kind gesture followed by withdrawal creates a cycle. Have you chased someone's good moments, ignoring the pattern? That's the bond at play. Women at peace abstain from that chase, grounding in their own worth. Their peace breaks the cycle, inviting stability. The fear of solitude, tied to the collective unconscious's abandonment archetype, also fades. Jung saw solitude as a path to wisdom, and Stoic Seneca found it a retreat for clarity. For you, this might mean facing a quiet moment without distraction. Notice the shift. Abstinence from filling the void reveals strength. Their solitude feels rich, attracting those who value depth. These traits, steadiness under scrutiny, releasing regrets, embracing change, build a life of peace, dissolving external pressures. The woman at peace with herself stands firm, her presence a quiet revolution. As these traits form the core of inner peace, they also equip you to handle the subtle undercurrents of everyday interactions, like the quiet judgments that can erode confidence over time. The woman at peace with herself demonstrates a profound trait in her ability to discern genuine feedback from projections. Jung explained projections as the unconscious way we displace our disowned qualities onto others, fears of inadequacy or unresolved anger, for instance. These women recognize when criticism is not about them but about the critic's shadow. Stoic Epictetus taught that we suffer from our interpretations, not events, and modern trauma psychology shows how this discernment breaks cycles of self-doubt rooted in past relational wounds. Their clarity acts as a filter, preserving their peace amid external turbulence. In third-person analysis, women who embody this discernment carry a rare wisdom because they've integrated their own projections through shadow work. The collective unconscious often amplifies archetypes like the critical mother or the perfect woman, leading others to project unmet ideals onto them. But these women don't absorb it, they've abstained from the compulsion to internalize every word, fostering a self-sovereignty that feels unshakable. Psychologically, this trait heals trauma bonds where you might have once sought approval to soothe old rejections. Their presence feels inviting yet protected, drawing people who respect depth over superficial harmony. Have you ever taken someone's offhand comment to heart, letting it linger for days? That's the shadow of unworthiness surfacing, and abstinence from overanalyzing frees you to see it clearly. Directly to you, have you felt that sting when a loved one's remark hits a sensitive spot, making you question your path? That moment is an invitation to reflect, not react. Jung would say it's their animus, the inner masculine, projecting control issues onto your choices. The woman at peace pauses, asking what the words reveal about the speaker, not herself. Stoic Aurelius advised viewing such moments as opportunities to practice virtue. For you, this might mean noticing the urge to justify your decisions and choosing to let it go. Abstinence from defending every boundary builds this discernment, turning potential conflicts into insights. Their ability to separate self from others' noise becomes a quiet strength, one that empowers healthier bonds. This discernment leads naturally to another layer, the trait of fostering mutual growth in relationships. Jung's concept of individuation emphasizes that true connection comes from two whole selves, not fragments seeking completion. These women encourage others' development without taking responsibility for it, having abstained from codependent fixing. Stoic Seneca spoke of guiding without forcing, and psychology links this to secure attachment styles, where healed individuals support without enmeshment. In archetypal terms, they embody the wise companion, not the rescuer, drawing from the collective unconscious without getting lost in it. Have you stayed in a dynamic where you did all the emotional work? That's a trauma bond, tying your peace to another's progress. For you, this might mean observing when a partner resists change, reflecting on your role without stepping in. Notice the pull to intervene. That's the shadow of needing to be needed. Abstinence from that role lets growth unfold naturally. Their relationships thrive because this trait creates space for authenticity, attracting equals rather than dependence. The woman at peace doesn't force harmony, she invites it through her own steadiness. Deepening further, these traits illuminate the challenge of trauma bonds in subtle ways, like the lingering pull toward familiar pain. Modern psychology describes how these bonds form through repeated cycles of tension and relief, keeping you engaged despite harm. Jung saw this as an unconscious replay of archetypal patterns, the victim and perpetrator, for instance. Women at peace abstain from re-entering those cycles, grounding in their traits to recognize the pattern early. Stoic Epictetus urged questioning our impressions: is that connection love or habit? For you, this might mean feeling the draw to an old friend who drains you, then reflecting on why. Abstinence from immediate reconciliation reveals the bond's hold, fostering freedom. Their peace acts as a barrier, preventing new bonds from forming. Have you ignored red flags for the sake of familiarity? That's the collective unconscious at play, echoing past securities. Through traits like boundaries and presence, they dissolve this, inviting introspection. This freedom draws deeper connections, free from compulsion. The fear of solitude also emerges here, often projected as clinginess or neediness by others. Jung linked this fear to the shadow of isolation, a universal archetype in the collective unconscious. Women at peace embrace solitude as renewal, not punishment. Stoic Seneca found solitude a path to self-examination, and psychology ties it to building internal security. For you, this might mean facing an empty weekend without plans, noticing the anxiety rise. That's your shadow inviting exploration. Abstinence from filling every gap with activity transforms solitude into a trait of strength. Their comfort in alone time feels empowering, attracting those who value independence. As traits interweave, they address these challenges head-on. Trauma bonds weaken when you abstain from chasing relief, projections fade with discernment, solitude becomes an ally. The woman at peace with herself navigates life with a rare equilibrium, her traits a guide to enduring calm. As this equilibrium takes hold, it extends into how you respond to the inevitable relapses in your journey, the moments when old patterns resurface, pulling you back toward familiar discomforts. The woman at peace with herself exhibits a trait of compassionate self-forgiveness during these slips. Jung's shadow work teaches that relapses are not failures but signals from the unconscious, highlighting areas still needing integration. These women don't judge themselves harshly, they've abstained from the perfectionism that amplifies shame. Stoic Aurelius viewed setbacks as part of human nature, urging us to rise without self-reproach, and modern trauma psychology links self-forgiveness to breaking shame cycles that keep us stuck in self-criticism. From an archetypal standpoint, this trait aligns with the wise woman archetype, who sees the full cycle of growth, progress, regression, and renewal, without despair. The collective unconscious often burdens women with the ideal of flawless resilience, but those at peace release that burden. Psychologically, this fosters neural pathways of kindness, countering trauma's harsh inner voice. Their ability to forgive themselves feels empowering, modeling a grace that others find inspiring. Have you ever slipped into an old habit, like seeking approval after a confident streak, and then berated yourself? That's the shadow of unworthiness, and abstinence from self-punishment transforms it into learning. Directly to you, have you felt that wave of disappointment when you react impulsively, perhaps snapping at a loved one after promising yourself patience? That moment tests your peace, but the woman at peace meets it with understanding, reflecting on the trigger without spiraling. Jung would say it's the animus surfacing, the inner masculine pushing for control amid vulnerability. Stoic Epictetus reminded us that we control our responses, not the initial impulse. For you, this might mean acknowledging the slip, noticing its root, maybe fatigue or unresolved hurt, and moving forward. Abstinence from dwelling on the mistake builds this forgiveness, turning relapses into steps toward deeper integration. Their self-compassion becomes a foundation, attracting relationships where grace flows both ways. This self-forgiveness naturally evolves into a trait of resilient optimism, not blind positivity, but a grounded belief in personal growth. Jung's individuation process views optimism as emerging from shadow integration, accepting life's dualities without denial. These women hold hope based on their own progress, having abstained from tying it to external outcomes. Stoic Seneca advised focusing on inner virtue over fortune's whims, and psychology ties this optimism to reduce depression, healing trauma's pessimism. In archetypal terms, they embody the alchemist, transforming challenges into wisdom. Have you lost hope after repeated setbacks, like in a strained friendship? That's the shadow of defeat, but abstinence from despair renews it. For you, this might mean reflecting on a difficult period, perhaps navigating loss, and finding threads of growth within it. Notice the resistance. That's your chance to cultivate this trait. Their optimism feels authentic, drawing others who seek that steady light amid uncertainty. The woman at peace doesn't force cheer, she draws from her integrated self. These traits also confront the fear of solitude head-on, especially when it manifests as projected neediness from others. Jung linked this fear to the shadow of the isolated self, an archetype amplified by the collective unconscious's emphasis on connection. Women at peace abstain from viewing solitude as punishment, seeing it instead as renewal. Stoic Seneca used solitude for reflection, and modern research shows it builds self-reliance, countering trauma's isolation wounds. For you, this might mean a quiet afternoon triggering unease, old fears of being unlovable rising. Abstinence from immediate distraction lets you explore it, turning solitude into an ally. Their comfort in solitude radiates a self-sufficiency that dissolves projections, where others might label them distant. Have you felt judged for needing space? That's often their animus projecting discomfort onto your boundaries. This piece shields against such misreadings, fostering genuine bonds. Trauma bonds, with their push-pull dynamics, also lose grip here. Psychology describes how these bonds thrive on emotional highs and lows, mirroring unresolved shadow conflicts. Women at peace abstain from the highs that mask the lows, grounding in their traits. Stoic Aurelius advised examining attachments rationally. For you, this might mean noticing the draw to a volatile connection, reflecting on its cost to your peace. Abstinence from engaging weakens the bond, inviting clarity. As traits like self-forgiveness and optimism interlink, they address these challenges with quiet power. Solitude becomes a strength, not a void, trauma bonds fade through discernment, projections reflect back to their source. The woman at peace navigates with a rare harmony, her traits illuminating a path to lasting self-acceptance. As this self-acceptance deepens, it reveals how the woman at peace with herself handles the weight of societal expectations, those unspoken rules that demand constant performance. She carries a trait of unapologetic authenticity, living true to her values without the need to conform. Jung's shadow work highlights how authenticity emerges when we integrate repressed parts, like the desire for freedom or the rejection of roles assigned by the collective unconscious. These women don't mask their true selves to fit in, they've abstained from the compulsion to please, fostering a peace that's genuine. Stoic Epictetus taught that freedom comes from living according to reason, not opinion, and modern self-worth psychology shows how authenticity reduces cognitive dissonance, healing the splits from trauma where you learn to hide. In third-person terms, women with this authenticity stand out because they've dissolved the persona, the social mask Jung described as a barrier to the self. The collective unconscious often enforces archetypes like the dutiful woman or the eternal caretaker, but these women redefine them, their presence a quiet defiance. Psychologically, this trait counters trauma bonds where approval felt like survival, allowing for deeper self-trust. Their unfiltered way of being draws admiration, not from perfection, but from realness. Have you ever toned down your opinions or needs to avoid conflict, only to feel disconnected later? That's the shadow of conformity, and abstinence from it restores your voice. Directly to you, have you felt that pressure to adjust yourself for others' comfort, perhaps in a family gathering or at work? That adjustment often stems from a wound where authenticity was punished. The woman at peace notices this pull and chooses to stay true, reflecting on its source without changing course. Jung would see this as balancing the anima, where the inner feminine claims her space without apology. Stoic Aurelius advised aligning actions with your nature, not others' expectations. For you, this might mean expressing a boundary clearly, noticing the discomfort rise. Abstinence from self-censorship builds this authenticity, turning potential isolation into empowerment. Their genuine expression feels liberating, attracting connections that honor the real you. This authenticity flows into another trait, the ability to find meaning in adversity. Jung's concept of synchronicity suggests that challenges hold hidden purpose, guiding individuation when we face them. These women view setbacks not as defeats but as invitations to grow, having abstained from victim narratives. Stoic Seneca wrote of turning obstacles into advantages, and psychology links this mindset to post-traumatic growth, where trauma becomes a catalyst for strength. In archetypal analysis, they embody the heroine's journey, transforming trials into wisdom without bitterness. Have you dwelled on a hardship, questioning why it happened? That's the shadow of meaninglessness, but abstinence from rumination opens insight. For you, this might mean reflecting on a loss or failure, searching for the lesson without forcing answers. Notice the resistance. That's your opportunity to shift. Their meaning-making feels resilient, drawing others who seek purpose in their own struggles. The woman at peace doesn't minimize pain, she integrates it into her story. These traits also address projections in nuanced ways, like when others project their fears of change onto your stability. Jung described how the unconscious displaces discomfort, and women at peace abstain from engaging, letting it reflect back. Stoic Epictetus urged indifference to unfounded blame, and this discernment preserves energy. For you, this might mean a relative questioning your independence, their words revealing their own shadow. Abstinence from debate fosters clarity, reducing the emotional toll. Trauma bonds, with their subtle hooks, surface here too, perhaps in the form of guilt over distancing from draining ties. Modern psychology notes how these bonds use obligation to maintain control. Have you felt pulled back into a role you outgrew? That's the bond, echoing archetypal patterns from the collective unconscious. Women at peace abstain from guilt-driven returns, grounding in their traits. Stoic Aurelius advised examining attachments, reflection dissolves the hold, inviting freedom. The fear of solitude evolves as well, especially when it's projected as selfishness by others. Jung saw this fear as a shadow archetype, amplified by societal norms. Women at peace embrace it as self-care, not abandonment. Seneca used solitude for introspection, transforming it into strength. For you, this might mean others reacting to your space with demands, their animus projecting neediness. Abstinence from justifying transforms the dynamic, making solitude a source of renewal. As traits like authenticity and meaning-making interweave, they fortify against these challenges. Projections lose impact through discernment, trauma bonds weaken with reflection, solitude becomes empowerment. The woman at peace with herself lives with a rare integrity, her traits a blueprint for enduring harmony. As authenticity and meaning-making become cornerstones of your peace, they also influence how you engage with the broader world, particularly in moments of collective pressure or cultural narratives that challenge your sense of self. The woman at peace with herself possesses a trait of detached empathy, where she connects with others' struggles without becoming entangled in them. Jung's concept of the collective unconscious reveals how shared archetypes, like the suffering victim or the heroic savior, can pull us into roles that drain our energy. These women offer understanding without over-identifying, having abstained from the emotional fusion that blurs boundaries. Stoic Epictetus emphasized distinguishing between what is ours and what is not, and modern trauma psychology shows how detached empathy prevents compassion fatigue, healing the wounds where you once felt responsible for everyone's pain. From a third-person viewpoint, women with this trait maintain their equilibrium because they've integrated the shadow of over-responsibility, a common feminine archetype amplified by societal expectations. The collective unconscious often casts women as emotional anchors, but those at peace abstain from that script, their empathy a gift rather than a burden. Psychologically, this trait fosters secure relationships, countering trauma bonds where empathy turned into enabling. Their balanced connection feels refreshing, drawing people who appreciate space alongside support. Have you ever felt overwhelmed by a friend's crisis, taking it on as your own? That's the shadow of fusion, and abstinence from over-involvement restores your center. Directly to you, have you noticed that urge to dive into someone's story, fixing what isn't yours to mend? That pull often stems from a learned pattern where you're worth tied to being the helper. Jung would describe this as an unintegrated anima, seeking wholeness through others. The woman at peace observes this tendency and chooses detachment, reflecting on the boundary without guilt. Stoic Aurelius advised acting with kindness but preserving inner calm. For you, this might mean listening to a family member's complaint without offering solutions, noticing the discomfort of holding back. Abstinence from the rescue reflex builds this empathy, turning potential burnout into sustainable care. Their detached yet warm approach feels empowering, attracting mutual respect in bonds. This empathy evolves into a trait of quiet influence, where she inspires change through example rather than persuasion. Jung's individuation process shows how living authentically ripples into the collective, awakening others' potential without force. These women don't push, their peace speaks for itself, having abstained from the need to convince. Stoic Seneca wrote of virtue as its own reward, influencing quietly, and psychology links this to modeling behavior that encourages self-reflection in others. In archetypal terms, they embody the guide, not the director, drawing from the collective unconscious without dominating it. Have you tried to change someone, only to face resistance? That's the shadow of control, but abstinence from it allows organic shifts. For you, this might mean living your boundaries openly, noticing how others respond without directing them. Feel that temptation to advise? That's your opportunity to step back. Their influence feels subtle yet profound, transforming environments without effort. The woman at peace doesn't seek followers, she cultivates her path, and others follow suit. These traits deepen your response to projections, especially those rooted in envy or misunderstanding. Jung saw envy as a projection of denied potentials, and women at peace abstain from reacting, letting it reveal the other's shadow. Stoic Epictetus urged seeing such as opinions, not facts. For you, this might mean a colleague's subtle dig triggering doubt, reflect on its source. Abstinence from defensiveness dissolves its power, preserving peace. Trauma bonds, with their emotional hooks, also fade further. Modern psychology notes how these bonds use shared pain to bind, but detached empathy breaks the cycle. Have you felt obligated to stay in a draining tie out of sympathy? That's the bond, echoing archetypal suffering. Women at peace abstain from shared misery, grounding in their traits. Aurelius advised rational examination, reflection frees you. The fear of solitude, projected as aloofness by others, loses its sting. Jung linked this to the shadow of disconnection, but women at peace embrace it as self-nourishment. Seneca found solitude clarifying, transforming it into wisdom. For you, this might mean others misreading your space as rejection, their animus projecting fear. Abstinence from explanation turns it into strength. As these traits culminate, they foster emotional freedom, where choices stem from self-sovereignty rather than reaction. Abstinence empowers this, abstaining from overgiving, from chasing approval, from fearing alone time. Inner peace becomes your anchor, guiding deliberate relationships rooted in mutual respect. The woman who knows her worth doesn't chase, she chooses.